Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Singh. I'm the CEO of the Australia-India Institute at the University of Melbourne in Australia. We are Australia's leading think tank on driving a deeper relationship between both Australia and India, but more broadly in building peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region and on the pressing global issues that our current world faces. It's very much my honour to be here moderating this session at the Yerevan Dialogue titled Plurilateral Pathways, Restoring Order in a Fraying Multilateral System. I think with the current geopolitical climate, I'm very excited to have this opportunity today for us to better understand the evolving dynamics of global governance in the face of an ever uncertain, paradoxical world. First, though, I would like to very much thank the ORF and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Armenia for hosting such an inclusive platform event on the issues facing our planet, navigating the unknown. I think it is through dialogues like these that we are able to influence global strategic thinking and shape new and emerging narratives of cooperation. And to do just that, I am joined by our panel. Mr. Mantsakan Safarian, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Armenia, Mr. Lasha Dasalia, the First Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, Mr. Andrew Rosendale, who is Member of Parliament of the United Kingdom's Shadow Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Foreign Commonwealth and Development Affairs, the Under-Secretary Minna Lina Lind, the Deputy Minister for Global Affairs of Estonia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Ahmad Saeed Moradzoda, the Deputy Secretary-General, Shanghai Cooperation Organisation, Professor Sara Mosso-Etsa, the CEO of Human Science Research Council, and Assistant Professor Keo Koga, Associate Professor at the Public Policy and Global Affairs Program, School of Social Sciences, Nanyang Technology University in Singapore. So before I dive into questions to our panellists, I have to say for me to be here in Yerevan, my first time in Yerevan, you do get the sense that we are in the regional hub of dialogue. And to discuss the importance of regional cooperation and governance, I think we do need to ask ourselves, how can we fix a waning multilateral system in a world where we require collective action? I think we are seeing now in international cooperative structures that that effectiveness of multilateral institutions isn't a straightforward question. Rather, it's about recognising that these institutions need to reform and redefine their roles in the global governance landscape. Smaller, more focused arrangements are gaining traction, partly because of the flexibility in cooperative structures and goal setting, and tangible milestones that can be achieved more quickly. So could a move away from multilateral forums to tailored, time-sensitive arrangements be the way forward for making meaningful progress in the shared challenges across the areas of peace, security, trade and health? Or do we risk fragmenting traditional multilateral structures in the search for stable global governance? These are the questions and the reason why we are here this morning, and I want to ask our thought leaders to really dive into the themes of this topic. I'm going to ask each of our panellists a question, and then we will see how we are going for time. We do have 7 panellists on this panel, and depending on that, of course, I wish to ask and allow for questions from the floor, particularly from our young fellows. So with that, I would like to start with you, Deputy Minister Safarian. Let me begin by asking you, firstly, I know that last year at the inaugural Yerevan Dialogue here, you emphasised the increasing important role of developing countries in the current world order. And I think when we think about traditional multilateral structures faulting and the increasing popularity of plurilateral groupings, what are the sort of mechanisms that you can see could be necessary to drive and deliver the public goods that are needed for developing countries? And how can we ensure those sorts of mechanisms complement the broader multilateral goals?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. It is a privilege, a pleasure to sit on this panel with many friends, colleagues, and new people I just met. I have to mention first that the topic of this panel very much relates to the slogan of our forum, Navigating the Unknown. And I think that we are at a time of an exploration, new exploration of international system, which we see that the old one is defunct. And the reason for that, I think, is that developing countries have need more stake, and they want more stake in and say in global affairs, in decisions, and the world needs to, the international system needs to adapt to that. But in the long term, I think that if plurilateralism is effective, it is going to become multilateral again. Because if it is effective, and the measure of effectiveness will be how much public good it delivers to this grouping, it will draw in more members, and naturally it will become multilateral. But for the time being, as they say, something is good than nothing. As far as the mechanisms are concerned, I don't see new mechanism being there, but the old ones like summit meetings, conventions, agreements, multilateral, plurilateral agreements, international banks, they have to deliver public good to make these groupings effective. If we see it, we will see more countries ascending to these groupings. As far as Armenia is concerned, we are at a juncture, at a crossroads of several such plurilateral groupings, and this is why we have acquired a foreign policy of diversification and balancing and balanced foreign policy. As a foreign ministry, as a country, we are believers in multilateralism. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I think I'd like to ask Deputy Minister Dasalia a similar theme, in the sense of the importance of developing countries needing more stake, which Deputy Minister Safarian has touched on. I understand that Georgia had recently, in April, hosting a trilateral meeting with Georgia and Azerbaijan and Armenia. I wanted to see, in terms of that, then, how does Georgia envision the role of plurilaterals in facilitating long-term stability and cooperation in the South Caucasus, at least? Do you think also then, if larger multilateral groupings are not as effective anymore in addressing those sort of shared security concerns, is this the new norm, the trilateral norm?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As my colleague Mr. Safarian already mentioned, we are living in quite turbulent period, and turbulent for whole international community. And we small countries feel it very directly, and maybe we are the first one who feels it, because multilateralism, while it is important for everyone, for small countries, this is only thing we have into our arsenal to survive into this turbulent period. And in this regard, I think, though a lot of skepticism now where we are, how strong the international community, international organizations are, it is still only thing which we have. And we are very much interested in this to be strengthened. I just want to say that no single country in the world is stronger than international community together. Problem is that we just, as an international community, does not know how to act exactly as an international community. Now, not going into more details regarding the question in South Caucasus, and when referring to the rules-based international order, I want to say that for more than 3 decades we are as independent countries now in this region, and South Caucasus was the example of so-called zero-sum game, when everyone was against everyone, when everyone's considering if he was gaining, someone had to lose. And when referring to last month's meeting, I want to say that maybe this is first attempt when we want to develop win-to-win approach in the region. And not disclosing the details, I'm very pessimistic after this first meeting that we will be able to go in this path. Start was very good, not talking about the details more, but I think that's exactly when we are developing the approach where to find the areas, to find the way how to everyone can benefit from regional cooperation. And of course, this will be based on general rules we all are adhered to. Maybe I'll stop here and we'll later, if there will be time, have time more to elaborate more through the questions. Maybe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I think, it'd be good to now, focus a bit on a specific issue when we talk about the landscape of global governance. So, Andrew Rosendale, I'm going to ask you particularly about trade liberalisation, because I know you have an interest, particularly in the UK becoming the 12th member of the CPTPP recently, which obviously we all know as the longest adjective of comprehensive progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. But in terms of trade liberalisation, and we think about multilateralism in that space, we've had Trump's assault on the multilateral order through tariffs throughout the world. We've got a whole new agenda now, I think, when it comes to trade and multilateralism. So I was going to ask you in the sense of, with the US's absence in the CPTPP, do you see this sort of plurilateral as pushing out the boundaries of trade liberalisation for the collective good? And therefore, is this the new normal when it comes to engaging on trade on the international stage?
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back in Armenia, and last time I was here was 1999. What an incredible turnaround this country has seen, particularly in the last few years. And it's a testimony to the people of Armenia and the government of Armenia that we now are seeing a country which is coming on leaps and bounds in terms of prosperity, in terms of trade and international cooperation. And I remember in 1990 that our then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, came to Armenia to open a new school in Gyumri, where there had been this dreadful earthquake in 1988. And it's that friendship and cooperation that I believe Armenia is in a perfect place to promote in the years to come. And not necessarily in a multilateral way, but in a cooperative way between nations. Multilateralism only works if you have strong nation states. If you diminish the power of a nation state, then you actually have much weaker multilateral cooperation. So everything we do globally has to be based on strong nations. And that is why I'm afraid many of the old multilateral organizations that we've grown to accept as the norm are no longer the norm and no longer necessarily acceptable. And that's one of the reasons why the United Kingdom left the European Union. And it's one of the reasons why our focus now is on Britain as an independent nation, striking new agreements on trade and cooperation with countries around the world, but making laws that suit the interests of the United Kingdom. So I would say to all delegates here, but particularly our dear friends from Armenia, that let's not get too bound up with the idea that everything has to be multinational, that actually bilateral cooperation is really more important. You build those relationships, those friendships, those understandings and that cooperation globally. Now, Britain has always done that throughout our history, and we're doing it again today. That's not to say we don't want to participate. The CPTPP has already been mentioned, and that we hope is going to be a vehicle for prosperity and free trade with like-minded countries in the Asia-Pacific region. But ultimately, without a strong nation state, you don't have strong global cooperation. And that's really the message I'd like to project at this conference today. But 3 cheers for Armenia. It's a fantastic country. It's upheld the Christian heritage. And in a very troubled region, I really hope that Armenia has a strong and proud future ahead of it, which I truly believe it will. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rosendell. I'd question whether President Trump would think that the US is not a strong nation state, and yet it has withdrawn quite a lot from the multilateral landscape. But let's move on and see if we can come back to explore that a bit further a bit later. I want to ask a question to Deputy Minister Minna Lindh from Estonia, and I think given Estonia's strong commitment to multilateralism, such as through its bid for a seat on the UN Human Rights Council, how do you see plurilateral arrangements potentially enhancing human rights or not enhancing human rights?
Thank you so much, and I'm really happy to start by drawing on our host, the Prime Minister of Armenia, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Armenia, who spoke yesterday morning about this very fragile state we are having in the international kind of order. And of course, the problem is that many countries would like to move away from the United Nations. And that is a question, why is that happening? Of course, for us, the main example of what is wrong with that international system is the fact that we have a permanent member of the Security Council, that being Russia, who is aggressor and is already waging a very long war of aggression against its neighbor, Ukraine. So how do you fix something like that? I think, every country is probably looking at it from different angles. What relates to human rights issues, it is the case that if they are not universal, as it should stem from the United Nations, then I think we are weakening the overall system and what we have seen. Of course, it is totally understandable that like-minded countries who are willing to or wanting to pursue different issues come together. Sorry. But I think if the main rules are not there, then it's very difficult to do something about it. So Estonia is currently leading 2 coalitions of the willing. One is Media Freedom Coalition, the other one is Freedom Online Coalition. So on media freedom, on internet freedom, both in bad decline over the past years. But we have that group of countries. I know some other countries are getting together to pursue some other issues. And when you are part of these coalitions, it's also very difficult, sometimes, a very difficult calls to make when you have to call out countries, even your friends who are not really stepping up or are not really fully anymore supporting the kind of human rights approach, which we have seen also when we have to make these statements, joint statements in the Media Freedom Coalition, for example, on the countries which have been our long-time friends and partners in the past, for example, Georgia for that matter, in the recent months. But this is the responsibility, and also, of course, in bilateral relations, it can be also sometimes very difficult to make these calls. But this is a value-based organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think now I'd like to ask Mr. Say Muradzoda, because you are part of a plurilateral, being the SCO, and then again, you also have quite a bit of extensive experience in multilateral cooperation as well. So in terms of the SCO and its efforts in the region that it's responsible for, particularly through the security focus domain, how do you see the SCO complementing or indeed competing with other regional structures?
Thank you. I will start by thanking our host, the Foreign Ministry of Armenia, first of all, and congratulate them with the excellent organization. SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is participating in the Yerevan dialogue for the first time. So it would be great, we'll be happy to share our views. First, I will start with saying that indeed the institutional capacity of the multilateral structures, there is a lack of capacity to adequately counter challenges and threats. The SCO, thanks to the efforts of the member states, it is characterized by a stable state and ability to ensure a high-level security in the region of its responsibility. So we are not going wide. And I can say that the SCO is a good example of the multilateral structure and at the same time plurilateral structure if there is a need to solve the specific issues. Now, what is SCO today? It's 25% of the global landmass, 42% of the world population. We have China and India as a member states, and 24% of the world GDP. And in the SCO family, we have 26 countries, including observers, partner dialogues. But the Central Asia remains at the core of SCO. So, and we are proud to say that we have been able, through the 24 years, to build one of the largest systems of the regional security as well. And this is done because of the several important features. First, SCO, it's very important to note, is not a military bloc. It's not an alliance focused in confrontation with someone else, some countries. Second, there is no security principles in the legal base of our organization. And third, SCO has consistently adhered to the principle that the bilateral disputes cannot be the agenda of the organization. And the fourth, there is a fundamental principle. All the decisions are made by consensus. Returning to your question on our efforts, I will give you some examples, for instance, on security issues. SCO, within the SCO, the unified definition of international terrorism is explored. It is enshrined in the Shanghai Convention of Combating Extremism, Separatism, and Terrorism. Right, it was adopted several months in advance of the tragic events in New York on September 11. Second, we have special organs or institutions like the SCO Regional Anti-Terror Structure. And we are now working, taking the great challenges on the security issues. We are now working to establish several mechanisms, additional mechanisms on security issues, like the Universal Center for Tackling Challenges and Threats, with 2 branches, one in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, and also we will soon establish the SCO Anti-Drug Center in Dushanbe in Tajikistan. And regarding drug, here's an example. During the last 10 years, the target work of our member states has contributed to the withdrawal or seizure of about 14% of the world drug circulation. So this is the result. And for the second part of your question about our interaction with other structures, yes, we do. We have an interaction. We are very closely interacting with, first of all, with the United Nations, with departments and agencies. We have good cooperation on security issues with UN Counterterrorism Department, with UNODC. Also, the regional aspect is very important. We are actively cooperating with ASEAN on the dimension, including the security, with CSTO, with CCAR, and with ICRS when it is needed. So concluding, I think one of the success of the multilateral structure like SCO is lies in the fact that there is no and cannot be the dominance by anyone. And SCO, I am the representative of Tajikistan, not a big country, the member state of SCO, and there is no element of pressure or coercion, I would say, and there is no winners and losers at the same time. There is only the collective solidarity result, which is we are very proud of working within the SCO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saimuradzora. And I think I'd like to now ask Professor Mosoetsa, because Ahmad has talked about the lack of capacity of multilateral structures. We've heard from also the Deputy Minister Safarian about how developing countries need to make a stake. So in the context of multilateral institutions that we're seeing are increasingly being fragmented and under strain, how do you see plurilateral arrangements impacting the Global South's voice in global governance? Specifically, how can an African think tank assert greater agency in shaping some of that plurilateral arrangements to ensure we do have a more equitable and a more inclusive policy in terms of outcomes? Or do these sorts of plurilaterals in fact risk creating new forms of exclusion almost?
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be back in Yerevan, a great place indeed. And this time around, I've had some time to explore the space, and I spent some part of my Sunday at the National Museum of History. I think what struck me the most about Armenia and the place that we are all in now, it's the history of and embracing the history of genocide. I think my input today would largely talk about things that we don't want to be talking about, and I have not heard in Yerevan this time around. I think multilateralism has indeed failed, and it is a new global order that we're seeing. It's the plurilateralism that we are experiencing now and that we should be embracing is, for me, not a detour to multilateralism, but a response to its failure. For me, I think sitting here today, I think if we are not bold enough, if we are not strategic enough in embracing the new global world, we'll face again, as panelists have been talking about, the same challenges and the same failures in the world order, when we are now again have not learned from the experience of Armenia and Rwanda on genocide, when we're seeing genocide now that we are not talking about in this conference in Palestine. Let me just say three things quickly. For me, I think it's no news that South Africa is part of the G20. We are indeed hosting G20 this year. We are a serious player inside BRICS. We are a part of BRICS, and therefore it's been a beneficiary. I also think that in particular in South Africa, in the continent that I belong to, Africa Union also plays that important role. But we must always ask ourselves, and this is the question that I'm asked today, for what purpose? I think the purpose for me could be for pandemic preparedness, for climate change, for changing the global finance order, for inclusion. Again, as I was here in Yerevan last year, I spoke about something that we don't want to talk about. Again, here, gender inclusivity. And I know that it's a world that is also wanting us not to talk about equity. I think it is also a world order that we need to prioritize peace, but not peace at its in the ways that we want to talk about it. Peace for others and not for others. An anti-genocide peace that we are talking about. For South Africa, at least we want to also talk about an equitable technology governance space. Let me conclude by saying the following from a think tank perspective. South Africa has always been seen not as an innovation space, but rather a space where we do other things, expropriate and do other things. But I think for me, the plurilateralism offers us a space in South Africa and the continent, a world where we are seen as equal players, a world where there is indeed coalition building and collaboration, and indeed a world where we definitely want to see the institutionalization of science diplomacy. Again, thank you very much for the question and for being here.
Thank you very much, Professor Mosoetsa, and for raising some important issues, particularly in relation to gender. I think it gives us food for thought in terms of, if we do have a failing multilateral system, who are the biggest losers here? And that's perhaps a question I could do a whole nother round on this panel with, but I'm probably not going to get that luxury of time, because I do now need to ask Assistant Professor Keo Koga. Professor Koga, obviously Sarah's talked about BRICS, G20, we've talked about SCO, there's been a bit of canvassing of plurilaterals throughout this panel so far. I know your research focus is very much on regional institutions in the Indo-Pacific. I guess I want to ask you specifically then how you see plurilaterals working to provide consistency in that region. Do you think there is a possibility for institutional clash? I'm thinking there about ASEAN, and I'm thinking about the Quad, for example, that there could be others. Are we doing that overlaying too much, or are there distinct sort of lanes of cooperation?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this interesting panel. And I would like to also thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Armenia, and then the ORF for holding this important conference. So regarding to the question about the plurilateralism in the Pacific, I think it's been there for a long time. If you look around in the Pacific institutions, including the ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, SCO, and also the SARC and other institutions, they are there. And then always, when we look at that, there are tensions between the regional organizations and also regional organizations and then global institutions like the United Nations. The United Nations actually try to facilitate certain kind of liberal values to the local areas in the Pacific, which is not ready to take. So in that sense, I think the regional institution helps facilitating the kind of creating the bridge between the global institutions and also regional institutions, and that's what the Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) actually did in the past. So obviously, there is a clash, but then what I actually want to emphasize here is that those kind of relationships are pretty much evolutionary. When they actually talk to each other, when they actually coordinate policies, find out the area of cooperation in particularly the non-traditional security issues, social, cultural, or socio-economic development, they could actually have the area of cooperation. And this is what the ASEAN and then the Quad actually achieved. First, when the Quad, the 4 countries, the cooperative framework between the United States, India, Japan, and Australia had emerged, then ASEAN was kind of anxious about it, because those are the major powers in the area. They are actually leading the international rules and norms, so that they consider, ASEAN countries consider that they may get marginalized diplomatically and also the materially. So what happened was the ASEAN actually observed, and then through the certain kind of opinions and then also the suggestions to the Quad members, and then the Quad actually took it into their agenda. So if you look at the agenda items of the Quad in the past couple of years, you could actually see several socio-cultural development items, and also the non-security, the traditional security items like humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, education, the infrastructure, etc., etc. So then the ASEAN actually accepted to some extent the Quad existence. And then even though they may not like reach the point where they could actually coordinate policies and then facilitate cooperation institutionally, they could actually communicate with each other and then try to be more kind of find out the division of labor between those kind of institutions. And then not only the Quad, but I think we could actually see this kind of phenomenon between the regional organizations. So now we actually see the ASEAN cooperating with the EU, ASEAN cooperating with the GCC, and then other regional organizations. So in that sense, yes, we could actually see the tensions and clash like at the beginning, but then probably like when we coordinate and then talk to each other, facilitating dialogue, that actually creates the more kind of clear idea what we can actually cooperate and then what we could actually achieve the stability in the region. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kei Koga. And I think we've had quite a good foray of some pessimism, some optimism in terms of what the future might look like for global cooperation. But I think a clear theme was from all of the panelists that the current multilateral system isn't working, has frayed and fragmented in terms of the times that we currently live in. I wanted to ask you, therefore, Deputy Minister Safarian, what's your response to what you've heard here in terms of that? We obviously know that the United States has really been one of the major architects of global multilateralism for the past 80 years. And yet with Trump's withdrawal from that stage now, are we seeing the era of multilateralism really being over?
Thank you, Lisa. I want to thank fellow panelists for their remarks, and particularly Mr. Rosendale for his inspiring remarks on my country, about my country. When Armenia was becoming independent, when it became independent in 91, we were strong believers in nation state. But then, over the course of these years, we have seen that we need, apart from bilateral arrangements, we do need multilateral platforms for regulating some issues, like, for example, the AI. I don't think that the world can be disconnected or fragmented in the time when we see artificial intelligence revolutionizing all aspects actually of our life. So, in my view, although, and I have to repeat myself, at this time maybe something is going to be better for a grouping than nothing, and that is plurilateralism. But in the long term, we are going to come back to some kind of arrangement that will involve most of the global and all of the countries, actually.
Thank you. Well, now's the chance to invite particularly some of our young fellows, if they have a question. I think there is a roving mic to provide you with. So could I start with the lady in the 5th row there? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Aisha Banerjee. I'm from India. Mr. Rosendale spoke about bilateralism and forging stronger relations. My question is related to that. It's on similar lines. In India, our conversation has now shifted to interest-based alliance or issue-based alliance, or what we call multilateralism. So I wanted to know your thoughts on that. Do you see it as a more realistic or, dare I say, effective framework for the future? Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Rupa Huck. I'm a Member of Parliament from the UK, so I know Andrew Rosendale very well. My question was about aid cuts. I don't think I heard it from any of the panelists, but it's another, obviously, withdrawal from multilateralism. The US aid cut is well known. That's with immediate effect, I think, suspension of all operations. We've seen in Gaza the aid blockade for quite a long time. I think it's partially restricted, softened now. So my question was really, with this other dimension of the withdrawal from multilateralism, are we seeing government by focus group? Because presumably these things are being done because the general public thinks, why are we chucking our money away at these people? And I've seen from my own inbox, the British public are very sympathetic towards the Gazans and the aid cut there. So just a comment on aid. I understand that aid cuts across the Western world are fairly common now with the move towards defence spending. So just I wondered what the panellists thought of aid cuts.
Hi, good morning. I'm Sarthak from New Delhi, and I'm presenting the Young Fellows here also. So my question is again to Mr. Rosendal. So given the recent UK-India FTA and UK's accession to the CPTPP, do you believe this could encourage India to consider joining the CPTPP, particularly as a strategic response to Trump tariffs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. As a young fellow from the Dominican Republic, I am increasingly convinced that our region's shared multilateral responses have not been enough. And in the case of Haiti, both the UN and CARICOM, we have seen that have failed to provide decisive action despite the urgency and proximity of the crisis. So my question is, what concrete mechanisms can plurilateral frameworks offer to fill this void? Are we talking about unilateral ways of relations, or this is the end of the multilateralism as well? Thank you.
Okay, so we have a bit of a foray there. I thought I might start with you, Andrew, if you'd like to respond.
Okay, well, thank you very much. There's a multitude of different questions, but I think it boils down to one simple answer, that, referring to what I said earlier, that every nation needs to consider what's in its own best interests. That doesn't mean you have to be selfish and ignore global issues or the needs of neighbouring countries, but without a nation state which is secure in its own constitution and its own boundaries, and is secure in a sense that they can make their own decisions in their own interests, then multilateralism is never going to work. Multilateralism will only work if countries feel strong enough to make agreements which are for the common good. And it's also not for multilateral organisations to dictate. What I think has happened across many of these organisations, UN is a great example, European Union is another good example, of how these organisations have become a law to themselves, and they have been infested by bureaucrats and people that have their own agendas over and above the interests of the component nation states. So I would say that, yes, it's important, as mentioned about India maybe joining the CPTPP. That's a matter for India to make its own decisions about what trading arrangements it wishes to make. But India must do what's in the interests of India, the same as Britain will now do, I hope, in what is in the interests of the United Kingdom. Now, Rupa mentioned about aid, and certainly the UK has slashed the money we're spending on aid, and the United States have effectively cancelled it. Whether that's going to be a long-term policy, I don't know. What I would say is this, is that for too long, I think that it's been taken for granted that countries will hand out large sums of money in aid, and this has gone to organisations, quangos and multinational organisations that spend money, and the people that elect us to office don't understand where that money's going and cannot see whether or not it's actually being spent to best effect. And in a world where we have to watch every penny we're spending now in terms of our own economic and financial situation, there is no political mandate, certainly in the United Kingdom, to continue spending vast sums of money on third world aid unless we can see there is a clear benefit not only to that country but also to the United Kingdom. So in general, I would say that, yes, let's not give up on multilateral agreements and international cooperation. There's always going to be a role for that. But let's go back to actually focusing on making our own countries stronger. And if we do that, I think it will make for a better world. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we can all argue that political mandate may be one thing, but humanitarian mandate is definitely there when it comes to the need for aid right now in certain parts of the world. So on that, I would like to ask Minna Lind if you can respond.
Yes, thank you so much. I do believe that multilateralism is not yet on its deathbed, as has been said also at the United Nations. I think there's hope, and there is also a question how to make it better. Also, it relates to the aid issue. I think there are many questions on this, but I think also the reform of the UN, what is happening now at its 80th anniversary, is spot on. So just to make what we are doing better. But I will also quickly comment on the coalitions or these plurilateral ways, which I said before. We are all for this, more so if they are for something and not against something. So this is what we have done also in our foreign policy. And also, as the only member of the European Union on this panel, I would strongly like to defend it. I think also the fact that there is a queue outside the door of the European Union of the countries who are wanting to join it, I think proves that it has been a great invention. And also the aid part, as European Union has also understood that we have to step up in a world where some things are not working as well. So European Union has done that, and the numbers speak for themselves. So I will not take longer of this, maybe somebody else wants to comment, but this is all available. Thank you.
Thank you, Minna Lind. Look, in the interest of time, I wanted to end this panel on a positive note. I think we've had a lot of discussion about the multilateral system being very much now in a not, I don't want to say failing, but certainly not in a bright light, and all of the sorts of activities that have come in its wake and continue to. All of our panelists have given a really comprehensive view, varying views on all of that. So to end on a positive note, I want to ask each and every one of you, if you can tell me in one word, what to you does the future of global cooperation look like? Deputy Minister.
Navigating together this unknown. Not in one word, but...
The theme, perfect. Deputy Minister.
I'll answer in 2 words. First, what it does not look. So, and here during the panel, I was hearing several things. And first of all, for me, regional cooperation is not against international cooperation. This is part of it. And second, for me, it was interesting listening to the questions, but we still are asking questions, which is normal, and that we still are asking questions from perspective of our own interests, let's say. Interests are important, but there have to be interest, multilateralism to be strong together. I believe it is, but and again, national interest never is against international interest. It's just part of it.
Thank you. Andrew, future of global cooperation?
Well, national independence has to come first. But secondly, if you've got your national independence, you're free to cooperate globally, whether it's trade, whether it's cultural cooperation, military cooperation. You can do that, but you have to firstly have a strong, independent country that can make its own decisions in its own interests. Once you've got that, globally, you can bring countries together where there's something in common. But we can't all be the same. There isn't like one template for all countries to follow. There is not one prescription for a successful nation. Every country has to develop in its own way in an evolutionary fashion and not be dictated to by multilateral organizations that think they know best.
Sarah? Everyone's struggling to give me one word.
Firstly, I think we, at some point, we need to agree on the discussion on what we are now calling aid, and its history and the political economy of what you're calling aid. For me, I think it is about global equality and global world peace. Thanks.
Thank you. Ahmed?
Well, thank you. I will respond from the angle of regional organization. In the circumstances where we see the multilateral structures, the ability of them to withstand crisis is decreasing. There is a necessity to strengthen the institutional capacity, which is very important, should be based on the real assessment of the situation in the ground. I agree with our colleague from UK. Less bureaucracy, more actions. I think this is the response. Thank you.
Minalina?
Thank you. So I think the answer was already in the question, cooperation, I would say, but I think the main thing is what it needs is political will, and I think that's what we are often lacking. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Just quickly, I think the multilateralism is going to be more focused on the region. Obviously, the national strength is really important, but then I think in order to facilitate that, they have to actually have the cooperation with the neighboring countries. And then that actually regionally focused, the coordinated and also uncoordinated cooperative frameworks going to be proliferated. And then how we could actually deal with that actually depends on how we could actually negotiate with each other. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And please thank all of our panelists. That's the end of our time. A big thank you to Deputy Minister Safarian for the Republic of Armenia hosting this really insightful dialogue, and for this particular panel, it was a pleasure to moderate all of you. So thank you very much.